Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to the Simply Strategic Ministry Podcast, where our goal is to help church leaders grow their ministries through simple strategies and scalable systems. I'm excited you're with us today. We are going to be spending this next season of the podcast and this next season of SSM focusing on recruiting volunteers. Now, it's really important to understand what we mean when we talk about recruiting. And so we really have two different types of processes when it comes to volunteer systems. And one is recruiting and then onboarding. And we really have three, but you have recruiting, onboarding, and training, or you might call it a retention system of how do you retain your volunteers. But the difference between recruiting volunteers and onboarding volunteers in our world is that recruiting is how you get to somebody where they say, I'm interested in serving. And then onboarding is when they officially express interest in serving, then onboarding them to become a full-fledged volunteer in your ministry. So today, as we focus on recruiting, we are going to focus on just that first part of finding new people who may or may not be interested in serving within your ministry. So today's podcast, we're going to jump into a pre-recorded part of our online course called the Strategic Recruiting System. And we're going to talk about the three things that you need in order to recruit volunteers. And so we hope to re-release this course in the future. But I hope today's going to be really helpful for you. And then as always, it becomes awesome when you like and you subscribe and you share this podcast with your friends and those who might be interested in the material. It helps us get the word out, and it helps our content go further. And that's what we want. I also want to tell you about something special that's coming up, and that is our online webinar that's going to be featured in June. June of 2024, we're going to be hosting this, and you can go to our website, simplystrategicministry.com, to sign up. But we're going to spend the whole webinar on talking about a recruiting campaign and how do you do a recruiting campaign that actually works. Okay, because we've all done different recruiting initiatives, but do they work? Well, we have tons of data from my own experience, from the experience of leaders I personally know, and then others I coach, that if you will run a strategic recruiting campaign, you can save yourself a ton of time while recruiting a ton of volunteers. And so we hope you'll join us. It's free to sign up for. You can also sign up and purchase one coaching session with that to kind of take the material that you learned and then meet with one of our coaches to help you put it into practice within your ministry. So I hope you'll take advantage of that as well. So without further ado, here is a clip from the course, The Strategic Recruiting System. I hope you find it really helpful. Let's talk about recruiting that never stops. You know this, I know this, anybody in ministry knows this. It doesn't matter if you are tired. It doesn't matter if you have a lot of energy. It doesn't matter if you take a vacation or a sabbatical. It doesn't matter what's going on in life. It doesn't matter if you have little kids or big kids or no kids at all. Ministry never stops. There never stops. Volunteers never stop moving to another cities, and volunteers never stop quitting, and the church never stops growing and reaching, and the mission of God never stops as well. Like it's not like we can hit pause on anything. Like it never stops. Ministry never stops. So your recruiting should never stop as well. We should always be recruiting new volunteers. There should always be a steady stream of volunteers coming into your ministry. Now, we know this, that there's always a steady stream of volunteers who are either moving on to another church, who are taking a break, who are moving into another ministry, or graduating out of your ministry. So because of that, we need to have a plan and a process and a strategy in place to make sure that recruiting isn't just a campaign. It's always ongoing. So we're going to talk about Recruiting Never Stops, which is a part of our 3-step plan of what we call our fluffy framework, the 3-headed dog of recruiting, which is we have our culture where we're naturally recruiting. We have our big high impact recruiting campaign. And now we're talking about the recruiting calendar. And so we're going to learn all about creating your calendar, creating your regular rhythms, creating what you do on a regular reoccurring basis to really be leveraged for recruiting. It's what we call our recruiting calendar. So a recruiting calendar is this. A recruiting calendar is your practical strategy for recruiting yearly, monthly, and weekly. So it's not enough just to recruit 1 or 2 times a year in a campaign. And it's not enough just to, have some first step meetings. And it's not enough to just do some things here and there where we're inviting people to come check out our ministry each month, okay? We really do need a comprehensive strategy that's dealing with the big things that are happening yearly, the little things that are happening every single week, and then also, what are you doing every month for recruiting? Because if you're growing a ministry, like we talked about, when we hit up against the growth barriers, okay, when we hit up against the growth barriers in ministry, one of the main things that got us out of those ruts and got us unstuck was always creating space and creating a better system so that more volunteers could get into the ministry. See, if you want to be constantly growing, you need a constant flow of volunteers into the ministry. So what is the practical strategy? Like, how does that happen? Because that sounds really good and all, but we know that the calendar's probably already full. You probably already have trainings. You probably already have mission trips. You probably already have big Sundays and big Wednesday nights and camp and all kinds of different things going on. And so when you think about, all right, how do I do this all the time? I bet that probably brings you stress. Because why? It's just another thing I got to do, another agenda item, another budget item, another thing I got to figure out and recruit for. And it does get stressful. But I want to bring you a practical strategy today that's going to help you do it with less stress. And so ministry is not going to stop. You can't stop it. So why should you recruiting? So let's talk about kind of these 3 parts. And I want to help you literally think through a strategy yearly, monthly, and weekly for how you're going to do this. So that way it never does stop with your ministry. The part 1, the thing I want you to think about is your yearly recruiting. Now, we've covered this in our last session, but you need a strategy that's going to do high impact things for the year. And so if you haven't watched about our recruiting campaigns, this is what we're talking about. But your ministry, I think, needs 2 high impact recruiting campaigns every single year. So every single year, I'm coaching teams to do 2 recruiting campaigns. And here's where I'm coaching them to do that. The first one is May and June. So kind of depending on when, we're thinking 90 days out. So somewhere in May, somewhere at the beginning of June, depending on when your ministry, your semester restarts back in August or September, you're thinking May and June, you need that big recruiting campaign. So if I'm planning a year out, I'm saying, all right, during this segment's when we're kicking off a new recruiting campaign. So May and June, you need that new year campaign because you have a lot of new needs that are coming through and down the pipe. And then January, I want you to think about a mid-year recruiting campaign. Your August campaign's always going to be bigger than your January one. That's okay because you always need more volunteers in August usually than you do in January. But some people will back out in the middle of the semester, or you've grown through your semester and your church has grown and now you're in January. Well, you need to be thinking in January, I'm doing this mid-year recruiting campaign. So I'm thinking 90 days out from January is kind of when I'm thinking through when this is going to happen. And so yearly, we've covered that. Let's talk about monthly, and we'll hang out here for a little bit. So monthly recruiting, okay? Let me tell you something that might be shocking to you, and this is what I think, okay? I think your ministry should do 1 recruiting push per month. All right, let's sit that for a second. Think about that. 12 different recruiting pushes that you should be doing. Now, I bet if I'm sitting and I'm listening to this course and I'm already stressed out, which is why I got the course, I'm already trying to figure out how to make ends meet with my budget and my time and my bandwidth and my lack of staff, I bet this is going to be your pushback. Your pushback probably is, I don't have time to do a monthly recruiting push. And guess what? You're probably right. You don't have time to do what's in your head, okay? But we think about things a little bit differently at SSM, okay? And so what we would call, there's a traditional mentality when I say, hey, do something new. You may get that if you're anything like me, it sometimes can be defensive to do new stuff, especially when somebody's asking you to do something new. Like it comes across at the leadership meeting, hey, you need to do this, and it's not your idea. I can sometimes be apprehensive to that. And I bet you might be apprehensive to that as well right now as I'm saying 12 different things you need to be doing. How do I add 12 events to my calendar? Well, there's a traditional mentality thinks is I need to do something completely new to get better results. So if you're thinking with this traditional mentality, you hear about 12 different things, you might think, okay, that means I need to do a recruiting campaign. That's one. Mid-year, 2. That means I might need to do a big interest night. Okay, that's 3. Okay, that means I'm going to have to plan an event. That means I'm going to need a brand. That means we're going to need a website to get people to sign up. That means we're going to have to figure out who's going to lead that night. And your brain can kind of begin to think through all these different things, and it can be overwhelming. It's like, okay, if I'm going to do 12 new things, that's 12 new lines in my budget. That's 12 new brands. That's 12 new website signups. That's 12 new checklists I need to make. That's 12 new. I mean, it gets overwhelming, and then you get stressed, and then it's like, all right, we're back at square one. I need a new course. That's not the mentality we want you to think with. We want you to think with what we call strategic mentality. And this is the difference. It's that I need to leverage what I already do to get better results. I need to leverage what I already do to get better results. So when we say 12 things, okay, what we're not asking you to do is we're not asking you to come up with 12 brand new things. What we're asking you to do is to look at what you already do and figure out how can I tweak these to leverage for recruiting, okay? So for example, the difference between a solid and a liquid is 1%, right? 33, 32. Water becomes ice with 1 degree, not 1%, 1 degree. A liquid becomes a gas with 1 degree. Sometimes there are little small tweaks that you can make to the things that you're already do. That just might be a 1% or 1 degree change that actually would change everything for your recruiting. So we want to think about what are we already doing as a ministry that we can leverage for recruiting. Okay, so let me break this down for you. I want you to think about your ministry in this wheel here, okay? So when you see this wheel, I want you to think, you're probably already got something planned for September. You've already got something planned for December. You could go around the entire wheel here, and you could think about what you're already doing. So this is the way I would break this down. So think about the inner circle here. The inner circle are the things that you're already doing, okay? This is your current programming, okay? So this is not new ideas. This is stuff that you do every year. Like maybe you always do a D-Now in this certain month, or you always do a Christmas party for your volunteers at this certain month. I don't know what that is for you, but I want you to think in this center circle, what we're going to do, we're going to write down our current programming, okay? So this is just an idea of, what it might look like in your student ministry. We'll use a student ministry, for example. So you might come up here to FKO in August and think, okay, we're going to have the fall kickoff in August. We're going to take over a pool, or we're going to have, fireworks, or I don't know what your church does, but let's say, you're doing a fall kickoff in August. All right, then you move over here to September. And in September, you have your parent night maybe. Maybe that's a night you invite your parents in. Maybe in October, you do a big outreach event for Halloween or a trick or treat or something like that. November, you may not have anything going on, so you just kind of leave that blank. Christmas party. Maybe you do a big volunteer Christmas party or a team night coming in January. I used to do team nights in July and team nights in January. And that's when I would be training my volunteers all together at one time. So you might be thinking team nights then. Maybe you don't do anything in February, so you leave that blank. Parent night, maybe again. We used to always do 2 parent nights a year where we'd invite parents in to come check out a Wednesday night in youth ministry. And then maybe in April, right around Easter, we would always do kind of a big outreach event to kind of jump on the back of Easter and those high attendance seasons. And then May, we didn't really do much. And then June, we always had camp. So what I want you to do is I want you to literally take this resource that we're giving you. And what I want you to do is I want you to think and just write down, here's the things we already do. Now, if you don't have anything, that's fine. Just leave that blank. But go ahead and write down all those things that you currently do, okay? So what we're not going to take is a traditional mentality where we need to create new things. What we're going to do is we're going to say, I need to leverage what I already do to get better results. So you've written down your programming. And so what we want to do is we want to try to figure out, how can I leverage what I already do for recruiting? So this is what this could potentially look like in your ministry. Okay. So let's start up here in August. Okay. Or actually let's start with, we'll come over here to September. Okay. We'll kind of work through the wheel here. All right. This is how I have done it before. And this will be different for your ministry, but it's a tool to help you think through how you can just begin leveraging things. Okay. We would do a parent night. Okay. So what we would do is at that parent night in September, we would bring all the parents in and we would let them watch a Wednesday night service, and maybe we would train them on an issue. Maybe it's gender or using, cell phone usage, or just something that applies to a parent of a teenager. And then what we would do is we would make an intentional pitch for them to serve. And we would, on that night, we would try to recruit them. So we didn't create a parent night, a brand new event for parents. We already had parent nights. And what we did is we just leveraged the parent night to recruit parents. You see that? Does that make sense? Didn't need to do anything. I just needed to tweak and leverage what I already had. So we have an outreach event. So we would always do a big Halloween outreach event, whether that was a big massive haunted house or a big bonfire or a trunk or treat or something like that. We would always have that outreach event. And so what we would do is we would say, hey, we need some specific event volunteers to help us run this. So you might come up to our outreach event that was a haunted house and a gospel invitation and a big night of worship type deal, which we would do sometimes in October. And we would bring in other volunteers with us and say, hey, we need extra help in this. And then the goal was then to say, hey, what do you think about doing this every single week? Would you be interested in a conversation, coming to a first step meeting on this? And then, so we're just leveraging that outreach event for event volunteers. Now, November, we usually didn't have anything going on in November. So we would do something, we would add something to the calendar. So again, this was leverage. We had nothing going on, so we just added something. So we would do a competition for volunteers and say, all right, whoever can get the most people, give me the most names and get them signed up, we're going to give you a little extra Christmas gift in December. We're going to give you a $100 Ruth Chris gift card for a steak. Okay? So we would do like a little competition, in November. Well, the Christmas party would bring in all of our volunteers. We do this every single year. We would bring in our volunteers to, celebrate them at Christmas. And at that point in time, all right, I could leverage the Christmas party and say, all right, well, hey, we're going to give away a little gift card, or we're going to give away a little Christmas gift this year to whoever gives us 3 names down on this card here, or whoever gives us 3 names of somebody that they think should be serving in this ministry. So we didn't plan a Christmas party for recruiting. We already had a Christmas party there. We just then said, all right, at the Christmas party, we're going to leverage it for recruiting. So what we would do is we would take all of those different things, whether it's parent night or outreach event or camp. Like at camp, we would just say, all right, at the end of camp, we're going to pitch to all of our seniors to come back and serve next year. We didn't create a new thing for seniors. We just leveraged what we already did for recruiting. And what you do is those things where you don't have something going on, like it's just regular programming, maybe that's where you add the recruiting campaign in. Or maybe you add a little competition, or maybe you have a specific vision night for new, because basically what happens is if you already have something planned, your bandwidth's already full. Your calendar's full. You don't have time to do anything. So leverage those. But if you're open, maybe you could do something that's a little more higher effort on months where you don't have a lot going on, like May or December, or, where there's not a lot going on in your calendar. Of course, this is completely different based upon your ministry. That's why we say there's nothing that we do is one size fits all, because your church is going to be different. But you can take this little system that we have here, you can take this system here and integrate this into your ministry. And this would be a really great exercise for you and your team to do. Print it out, put the wheel up on screen, put it up on a whiteboard, and literally write it in and figure out, okay, how can we leverage what we're already doing so that way we intentionally have a push every single month. So here's kind of the step-by-step plan to recap. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to use this PDF. You're going to use the 12-month recruiting calendar, and then you're going to plan 2 recruiting campaigns. So I would start there. Where's the where's the start of the year recruiting campaign going to go for you guys, and where's the mid-year. Like I said, in student ministry, we always did the start of the year, students and kids. We always do that recruiting campaign in May because we needed about a month or so to onboard those really high capacity volunteers. In guest experience ministry and creative ministry and programming ministry, that could be closer in July because the onboarding isn't as rigorous for holding a door versus leading a student small group. But you're going to plan where those are going to go first because those are really important. Those are high impact. And then you're going to identify in that inner circle the programming that you already have. So go ahead and write all that down, what you have, and then you're going to see how you can leverage each of those things for recruiting. So that might be a great creative meeting for you and your team to have, is to get this up in there and figure out how we're going to leverage it. And then on the months that you have nothing, add some low effort or maybe even some medium effort. Don't stress yourself out. You already got recruiting campaigns. You already got a lot going on. But add some, hey, let's have a competition this month. Or let's have a staff competition where we put a Ruth's Chris gift card on the line or something. But basically what I'm saying is when you do, you'll have an intentional strategy for recruiting each month. The calendar never stops. Ministry never stops. Why does your recruiting? So this is your intentional strategy for leveraging your calendar for recruiting. So we've talked about yearly. We got a mid-year. We got a start of the year campaign. We got a strategy now. We got the two wheels that we're working here. And then what is your weekly recruiting? What does weekly recruiting look like for you? Okay. So much of recruiting happens outside of the campaigns and outside of kind of the set stuff. When it comes down to it, yes, clear and contagious vision matters so much, but a lot of recruiting is just grit. It's just talking to people, meeting with people, making time for people, going to coffee, having the meetings, and just doing making the cold calls, sending the text messages, and just kind of gritting it out. The grittiest person will win the most recruits. So, you may not be the most intentional when it comes to building a system, but sometimes if you just have grit to talk to a lot of people, you'll get a lot done. So let's talk about what it takes on a weekly reoccurring basis in order to recruit a lot of people into your ministry. Here's what I think. You need to be inviting people each week to begin your onboarding process, okay? So at SSM, we talk about a 3-step onboarding process called our first step, first look, first serve. Now, the first step meeting is it's really what you're inviting people into. And you need to be inviting people to have first step meetings with you every single week, okay? But here's the problem, okay? The problem is most ministries onboard new volunteers quarterly or monthly instead of weekly. I have watched this happen so many times. When we begin creating more opportunities for people to join a process, more people join. So for example, when I was serving at a church that had a membership class about quarterly, there were not a lot of new members going through. We made the tweak in a leadership meeting once to say, all right, it was a 3-week process. We're going to, as soon as the next 3 weeks are done, open up the next 3 weeks. So basically, there was kind of this constant membership class going on. We added so many more people into our membership than we did when we were just doing it quarterly. Anytime you create more opportunity, more people onboard through. So if you're only, some people will be like, yeah, we do a vision meeting, or we do a first step meeting, or we do an interest meeting once a month. Okay? Well, chances are maybe 60% of those people can't make that meeting. So now you're going to make them wait till next month. Well, if you make them wait till next month, 60% chance these people have kids, these people have lives, these people have a lot going on. So there's a good chance that they're not going to be able to make next month either. And so your recruiting slows. And remember, your ministry is going to move and grow at the pace of your recruiting. So if you slow down the pace that you're onboarding people through, and it's not weekly, then you're slowing the growth of your ministry down too. That's a problem, y'all. We need to be better than that. So if you're only doing it quarterly, which is awful, don't do that. If you're only doing it monthly, better than quarterly, but still dumb. I would just say, sorry, that was a little harsh. I would just say, like, move it weekly. So, because every day a recruit has to wait on you to onboard them makes them less likely to take their next step. So if they're waiting around on you, then you are the one, you're in the way of your ministry growing. That's an issue. Every day a recruit has to wait makes them less likely to take that next step. Like, people get excited. It's kind of, it's like the sower and the seed, right? The good seed goes down. It's easy to get choked out. You get excited. You want to get onboarded through. Maybe you're a new believer or you're a new person in the church. But then you don't hear from somebody for 2 weeks. You don't hear somebody for a month. You're not going to grow a ministry that way, I promise. My point is, you need to have first step meetings every single week. Every week you need a first step meeting. Do not wait around. Have your first step meetings every single week. Now, I encourage you to do it every single Sunday. Now, you may have a very hands-on, like, kids ministry role, or that might be difficult. Then empower a volunteer to do it. You should not have to, like, schedule coffee with somebody in the middle of their work week to make them get childcare for their little kids at home. And you should not do that. Sunday morning, everybody already comes to church on Sunday morning. Meet with them on Sunday. Before, after, I love meeting in between services for this. Now, I don't want to get too deep into a first step meeting, but you need to have that first step meeting every single week. Now, we're going to talk about how to actually, in our onboarding course, we're going to talk about how to make a high converting first step meeting where we're able to turn potential volunteers into volunteers right then and there, and the process and system for doing that. But without getting into that, you need it every single week. Most ministries onboard quarterly or monthly instead of weekly. Not you, not strategic ministries, not people following our system. And remember, you're just getting them to schedule that first step meeting. Hey, are you interested? Great. Here's my Calendly link. Done. Or here's my volunteers Calendly link. Done. And they're able to go in. They're able to click which Sunday. They're able to get the automated reminders. And so it's very, very simple. Use Calendly. I am bought in on it, okay? It has saved me so much time when it comes to recruiting volunteers. And the great thing is, you can set it up for a volunteer to use as well and actually be able to see their meetings and them schedule with their calendar if you do have an onboarding volunteer. If you can't, I love being in first step meetings, but if you can't be at that first step meeting, don't say, oh, I can't be at that first step meeting, so we're just going to do it every quarter when I'm available. Please do not do that. You are not going to have a traditional mentality. You're going to have a strategic mentality because you are a strategic leader. And if you follow these steps, you will have a recruiting strategy that never stops. I promise. Yearly, monthly, weekly, grit and grind it out. I know it's tough, but your ministry is going to grow at the rate of the growth of your volunteer base. So let's talk about how to use the resources, okay? How to use these resources, because if you follow if you use these resources, it's going to make your life so much easier. So let's talk about the resources that we have included in the course. The first thing we have included is the first step meeting template, okay? Now, we get deep into first step in the onboarding course. So I want to encourage you to take advantage of that course as well. But we'll give you that template in this to kind of help you get set up. Use the 12-month recruiting calendar. And remember, use this as a team. Don't just do it on your own. Use it as a team. Go through, use the inner wheel, write it down or put it on the whiteboard, redraw it out. Doesn't matter to us, doesn't matter to me. Just use it. And then the team night referral card. Now, I haven't talked about this yet because one of the most powerful strategies that we use is at our team nights, we ask everybody to say, all right, write down 3 volunteers that you think would be great at serving. And so what we do is everybody gets a little card. And on that little card, on the front, they put their name, and on the back, they put in 3 names. And I say, all right, at the end of team night, we are going to draw one of these cards out, and whoever's name it is, we have a prize for you. It might be a gift card, it might be a merch pack, It could be something. I don't know. It might be hey, you get to, we'll give you a free registration for camp, something like that. So if I have 100 volunteers, and I get 100 cards with 3 different names, sure, there's going to be some duplicate names on there, but I now have a base of about 250 people that weren't on my radar, including duplicates. So use the team night referral card for when you are at your team night or when you're at your volunteer training. Just make that, you could make this little template yourself too on whatever, brand it your own, but we'll send you ours that is Be Who You Needed. That is the team night referral card that says who should be serving in this ministry. And then now you have 250 new leads to begin recruiting and try to get to that first step meeting. We believe that when you do this, you're going to have recruiting that never stops. So use the resources, plan yearly, plan monthly, and then grit and grind it out weekly. And when you do, all right, you're going to have a lot less stress. You're going to have a lot more volunteers. Man, we hope that course helped you begin to have a framework for what it takes to implement the 3 parts of a strategic recruiting system. And so I would encourage you, after listening to that, the first thing is discuss it with your team. Discuss the 3 parts and see what do we have that's working right now and what are the things that we need to implement. And the second thing I want to encourage you to do is sign up for our webinar. The strategic recruiting system needs a recruiting campaign, and we want to show you how to run an efficient and effective recruiting campaign that actually works. This could be game-changing for your ministry this fall. So I hope you will check it out, and thanks as always for watching the Simply Strategic Ministry podcast. See you next time.